Welcome to the Chai Center and welcome to the Chai Academy, a, a platform where we discuss many topics of Jewish interest. Now, there are all these discussions are recorded, and one can find them at thechaycenter.com/academy. So we've been discussing. A couple days ago, we were discussing the origin of the of sort of the rift between Jews and Christianity. It wasn't billed as that, but just discussing a little bit of history. So I figured that we may as well talk about the origin of the rift between Judaism and Islam. Now, I say that carefully, Judaism and Islam, and not Jew and Muslim. Right? The Muslims have no problem with Jews. They have a problem with Judaism. So therefore, if a Jew, for example, converts to Islam, they would embrace him because it's not the person, but rather it's the entity. Of course, as far as the Jews are concerned, the person and the entity are one and the same. There's no difference. We are who we are, and we are Jews, so therefore we're Jewish, and we practice we are Judaism. It's not something that we practice. It's who we are. So it's a very big difference. Anyway, and that's why, by the way, and it's for this reason it's taught that if a Jew actually does convert to another religion, it's still a Jew. So you can that person is never renounced. You cannot renounce one's religion because it's not a religion. It's part and parcel of your spiritual being. It's your essence. It's not something you practice. It's not something that you toy around with as a hobby, but rather it's whom you are, or we are. And so we see it somewhat differently, obviously. So Muhammad lived 571 to 630, somewhere around there, and very, very fond of Jews, and he was very, very fond of Judaism. And in fact, in the Quran, he mentions Moses over 100 times. Right? It is taught, I remember reading rather, that he used to fast on Yom Kippur, and he used to pray towards Jerusalem. So that's how much he was enamored with Jews, Judaism, Jewish. Once again, they're all one thing. So he was enamored and had good feelings. The where it went sour is primarily, and by the way, as he writes, that Ishmael, the son of Abraham, is the beginning of Muslim. So he felt that Abraham, which was the in the beginning, the father of all religions, was also the father of Judaism, cousins to the Jews. But where it turned was interesting. It was turned when the Jews did not reciprocate that love. They refused to accept him as a prophet. Chances are, I mean, who knows why they didn't accept him as a prophet, but probably is, for the most part, the Jews had Jewish prophets. Right? If you just go through all the prophets, there's Jewish prophets. It wasn't so much, that anything against him. I mean, it may have been, but but it was Jews had Jewish prophets. Non-Jews had non-Jewish prophets. But he was insulted about that. Also, Jews did not subscribe to his writings in Surah, where he writes that it's okay to beat your wife, and in fact, your wife should be beaten if she doesn't do what she's supposed to do. I think Jews rejected that outright, and they said, no, 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 no. First of all, if you meet a Jew that beats his wife, it's a rarity, and if he does, right, let me know, and we'll correct that one. So they weren't. It's just it's anathema. We don't do anything like that. In Judaism, we cherish the women. We recognize that they are the mother of all life, and we recognize that they nurture our children to the love, to love, to care, to cherish, to be kind, to be generous, and the love of Judaism, etc. So it's I don't think there's any greater act in this world than giving birth, where you give birth to another human being. That's wild. That's wild. And us men, we don't have that. We don't have that zechut, that merit, and women have it. And I think the reason why people don't talk about it as much because it's a common day occurrence. People give birth, but in reality, what happened here was magnificent, and therefore the women have to be cherished and thanked and appreciated. And it's like, wow. As a man would have no offspring if not for his wife, right? And a woman, I know, the petri dish, right? A petri dish. Anyway, so he got angry because we didn't reciprocate that he was a prophet. He also he said that Abraham was neither Jewish nor Christian. He got to that point, and Abraham was Muslim, and that created further of a rift because Abraham was considered our Abraham, and we recognize he's the father of many nations. We do, but we consider him the first Jew, right? He considered Abraham the first Muslim, and he was upset that we didn't recognize that as such. And he also was very upset because in his lifetime there was a prophet Ezra. Ezra was a great prophet, and Ezra the scribe, right? And he was revered, but Muhammad said that they treat him as a god, and Ezra's become this god. But truth be told, God, I don't see it. Most Jews don't know. I've never heard of Ezra. Right? And you can Google him, you'll see he was quite a guy, but never heard of him. So to say that he was a god, if he was, it was short-lived. He was a short-lived god, as opposed to an eternal God. So I don't know how accurate that was, but that was his feeling at the time, and he was upset. And unfortunately, he wrote his upsetness in the Quran. And therefore it was passed down from generation to generation, and it's even he quoted the Sadat, Anwar Sadat. He lived by one of the slogans in the Quran, and it was very difficult for him to sign the peace treaty with Israel because he had been preaching for years about how the Jews are wretched. And all of a sudden he had to come and shake hands. It was hard for him, but he was, let's call it what it is. He was very noble, and he made peace with Israel. So because of what was written in the Quran, the Jews actually had an interesting relationship with the Muslims for years. So the Jews are called dhimmis. We're called dhimmi. Any second-class citizen was called dhimmis, and it was I think there was a pact. It's like a written thing called the Pact of Amar, where it says that the Jews are and it was written. The Pact of Amar was in the 720, something like that. Where it was written that Jews are dhimmis. Now, if you want to know what a dhimmi is you don't have to go back that far. If you go back to the Jim Crow, right, the Jim Crow, and the treatment of the blacks, of the African Americans, it was terrible, right? African American had to go to the back of the bus. Had special places for the African American to be. When somebody came in, the black slave or not had to stand out of respect for the for the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. Right? It was humiliating, and the blacks were second-class citizens. Some would argue. Hey, Bonnie, good morning. Some would argue the blacks were third-class citizens, but that's what the Jews were. Now, they tolerated the Jews because the Jews were monotheists, and they tolerated the Christians because they're also in some way monotheists. But if you were a non-monotheist, they wouldn't tolerate you at all. Right? But as a dhimmi, as somebody who's a second-class citizen, you are forbidden to raise your voice too loud. You are forbidden to raise your voice at a funeral. You are forbidden to convert anybody who is not, in other words, if there's a Christian who wanted to convert, you were forbidden. A Muslim wanted to convert, you were forbidden. You were not allowed to practice any conversions whatsoever because dhimmis are not allowed to do conversions. They had a very strange rule. Is that a dhimmi, which could be Jew or Christian or any other non-Muslim but yet a monotheist, so we're not allowed to ride on horses. You were not allowed to ride on mules. You just weren't. The only thing you were allowed to have was a donkey, and that donkey you were not allowed to have a saddle. So it was just some very, very tough rules. The synagogues had to be non-conspicuous, right? So they had to be like in the background, not in the forefront. Which I tell you, a few months ago I went to China, and so there's a Chabad house where I went to Guangzhou. There is a Chabad house there, right? A Shaliach, a Lubavitch rabbi is there. Very difficult to find the place because they're not allowed to have signage. So it's just an address, and there's no signage, and you can't advertise, right? You can't advertise. You can have an address, and you ask someone for the address, but good luck getting someone to speak English. So I found it by chance. But it was, but it's the same idea. It has to be very non-conspicuous, right? It has to look like a regular house. Inside, you can do what you want, but outside, no, you can't. You can't flaunt it, and that's kind of where the synagogues. Hey, Susan, good morning. That's where the synagogues in Muslim countries, the synagogues in Muslim countries had to be inconspicuous. Here's the interesting part. It was easier to be a Jew living in Muslim countries than being a Jew in European countries. So as we know, Jews in European countries for many, many, many years were targeted, were attacked, and vicious anti-Semitism. A Jew in Muslim countries, they could live. They had to recognize their status. They had to recognize that that they were dhimmis, and they were second-class citizens, and if there was a row, an argument between a Jew and a Muslim, well, you stood no chance, because you weren't held in the same class. And it's interesting, in the year 807, I believe it was 807, is they came out with some crazy rule that Jews have to wear cone hats, and they had to wear yellow belts, right? Cone hats and yellow belts. So perhaps the yellow belt is a precursor to the yellow star. But that way you could recognize, that was the idea of the yellow star also, is you recognize who the Jew is. So Jews had to, in certain parts of Muslim countries, had to wear this. Now, this has nothing to do with 1948. 1948, it got very bad once Israel claimed independence. It got very bad, and the governments, even the good governments, couldn't really control their people. They were so angry at the Jews, and therefore you have, therefore you had to. A lot of Jews got out. The Syrian Jews ran, right, and other Jews ran, and other Jews were forced out of different. The Muslims claimed they had a Nakba, a time where the Muslims had to leave Israel. There were many, many more Jews had to leave Muslim lands in 1948. So that's factual. That's history, right? But you could live. The bottom line is you could live. As Susan points out, yeah, it's true that they some places require the Jews to have bells on their shoes or bells around their necks, basically punishing the Jews for the golden calf, which had and some places, in addition to bells, the women had to wear miscolored shoes, one red, one yellow, right? Or one red, one black, I think it was, so that was, it's almost like a clown uniform, but they did it. And could they live? Yeah, they could keep kosher. They can eat their pizza. They can eat their hummus, and they lived, right? And even and Jews had to walk. If there was no room on the sidewalk, Jews had to walk on the curb. Jews had to walk on the left, not on the right. The right of a Muslim is considered very prominent. The left is where the demons roam. So the Jews had to leave. Dhimmis, not only Jews, had to leave. If they were walking, they had to walk a little bit behind and to the left. That was the rules. There's a book. Which is I recommend that you read it, and it's by James Finn. James Finn. He wrote a book called Stirring Times, and basically it was I believe it was the 19th century Palestine. He wrote what he witnessed, about the different things that he witnessed, and one of the things he witnessed, which was interesting, is that at the end of the day, when the marketplace closed, the marketplace is the shuk, the Arab shuk, the Muslim shuk. So at the end of the day, if and when they had extra wares that they felt could not be sold tomorrow, they used to dump them onto the Jew, and demand payment. So the Jew didn't even have choice, and he couldn't vocalize anything. So the guy had half a pound of cumin left, and the guy wanted to open up a fresh one for the next day. So the Jew was left with that half a pound of cumin, and he had no choice but to buy it. But once again, still safer than Europe. Still safer than Europe. As we said, in 1948, a lot changed. And by the way, when people tell you that they didn't, that it was because of 1948 that there was such trouble, it's only because of Israel declared a state. Well, it's not the case. In 1929, in Hebron, right, it was still under the Ottoman Empire. I mean, it was and Jews had really no say, nothing. And a lot of Jews live in the Hebron, and over a course of a few days in 1929, basically there was a pogrom, and it was a pogrom by the neighbors. It wasn't outside, soldiers coming from afar and plundering the Jewish homes, which was like what happened with the Crusades, right? They came from England, Richard the Lionheart, and they went up and they killed everybody in their path. And when they got to Israel, they got to Jerusalem, they was pillaged and raped and burned, No, a blight on the Crusades, and a blight on the monarchy in United Kingdom, Great Britain. Um, but this was 1920. This was neighbors. Neighbors killed neighbors. What were they concerned about? They were concerned about that. This more Jews are moving in, and more Jews are moving in. We're losing a majority, and houses are going to become scarce and all that. So they just killed. They killed in 1929. There was another pogrom, and if it was Yemen in 1941, hundreds, I think 600 Jews were killed. In 600 Jews were killed in a pogrom in a matter of a few hours. So it really nothing to do with 48. There was just this because unfortunately, once again, the acrimony was written in the Quran, and it became just like this, all Jews, and because of that, there's been, because of that. But I believe any Muslim historian who's not a radical would tell you that that's not the case. You don't go around killing Jews, and you don't go around having pogroms. You don't. I think they could live with the dhimmis, but you don't just go around killing. And the Muslims didn't. Aside from, there was no love lost, but they didn't. And I'll tell you who, somebody very special was. They talk about the King of Morocco, right? When Hitler came, when Hitler came to power, and they went around, conquering or making alliances, Hitler Machshmai, what he did, he went to the King of Morocco, and he says, "I want the Jews," just like he did in Italy, just like he did elsewhere, right? All over the place. "I want you Jews." France and Belgium and Norway and Poland, etc. And he went to Morocco, and the King of Morocco says, "They're the Jews. They're my citizens." He goes, "Yeah, I'm not asking for your citizens. I'm asking for the Jews." So he goes, "Every single Jew in Morocco is a citizen of mine," and he wouldn't give him over. He wouldn't give him over to Hitler, the King of Morocco. To his credit, he just, he said, "No, they're my citizens. I'm responsible for them. There may be dhimmis, but I'm still responsible for them." And he defied Hitler. Right? And you know who else defied Hitler, which is interesting? And it's only because he was a meshuggah, he was a nutcase, and that was Franco in Spain. He was right. He just said Hitler said, "Give me the Jews." He says, "Excuse me, I'm the king of Spain. I'm the leader of Spain." And so while Franco was something wrong with him, right, and he was violent, vicious man, he defied Hitler also, but and he wouldn't give up the Jews in Spain. Just wouldn't. There weren't that many. You have to remember there was an Inquisition, so there weren't that many. But there was 60, 600. I don't know how many there were, but even now there's not that many. But he wouldn't give them up, right? So that was also, but that was because he was just he was a maverick. He was who knows what he was. He was a renegade. The King of Morocco was just honorable. He was just honorable. And there's still Jews in Morocco today, as opposed to, there's no real Jews in many of these places. You go to Algeria, you go to Yemen, there's not really Jewish communities. In Morocco, there is. So there are in Spain. When I was in Madrid itself, there were 3 shuls, and I came across 2 restaurants, kosher restaurants, and a couple of grocery stores. There's not that many Jews and that's Madrid. That's the capital. I think Barcelona has its share also, but it's so there's not many. the great synagogue in Madrid. I was there for Shabbat, and I was there for a weekday, and it's this they're all there. There's not a lot though. So now we preach about Mashiach, right? Yeah, that's true, Susan. The Jews that have come back to Morocco, the Jews that have come back to Spain are expats, right? Where did the Jews in Spain go? By the way, they ran to Algiers. That's where they ran. They ran to the Spanish speaking part of Morocco. That's where they went. From Spain. So Morocco speaks French and Arabic. So this is kind of a little section. But we speak about Mashiach. We look forward to a time when nation can live with nation. So it doesn't have to be that far apart, in my opinion. In my opinion, some of these animosities are old to the point where they're ancient and has been. Right? There's absolutely no reason why cousins can't live together in peace. Right? I think we see this. And I believe this is Mashiach's times. Dubai. There are tours going for Hanukkah to Dubai. There's Jewish weddings in Dubai. There's I saw from 12:31 to 1:10. There's Lasco getaway vacation going to Dubai. It's not that far fetched because there's very similar cultures, very very similar cultures. They tzedakah, I think they're called tzeddik. Mikveh, they have something similar where the woman takes a shower and before relations, and it's a holy name, and it's very very similar, right? I have a couple of Muslim friends in the neighborhood, and it's fascinating, just fascinating how they how we really could see eye to eye, and we have more in common than we do with a regular American, right? Because of the culture, because of the one God, Allah, Hashem, etc. There's no reason why there shouldn't be peace. There's absolutely no reason. But we just got to work harder. That's the bottom line. God bless. God bless. Any questions, one can leave here or rabbi@thechaicenter.com. Yes, they have their own version of kosher, halal. So many Muslims, when they can't find halal, they do eat kosher. Otherwise, if they find halal, they will not eat kosher, they will eat halal. But so yeah, Susan, you're right. There's a lot of similarities, and we need peace because it's an argument that doesn't make sense, quite frankly. God bless.